Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, frequently asked questions. So these days I'm getting probably thousands of questions every month, comments, whatever, emails, and I can't get to all of them, so I'm going to do a little frequently asked questions video here to address some of the ones that I get over and over again. Something to stress here, these are not stupid questions, they're actually excellent questions, and that's why people ask them a lot. Now, many of these questions, I've actually got a whole video that it addresses, or several videos that might, kind of address some of these questions, and so I'm going to throw in links as I go, or add them to the comment section so that you can go and track those down if you want to find more in-depth answers than I'll give you right here. Where do you get your steel? So there are a ton of different sources on the internet for buying knife steel. Important thing to remember is that your local steel supplier is probably not going to be the right place to buy knife steel. Most of the steels that you're going to use in making knives are somewhat specialized, and so you're going to need to get them from a more specialized vendor. Probably the single most common place to buy steel is from Admiral Steel. They've got a very wide range of steel, both stainless and carbon steel, some of the steels that you'd be using for Damascus. So that's one good place to start. Another excellent source are knife making supply houses. There's a whole list of them, and I'll put them down in the comment section. Those guys are dealing with knife makers all the time. If you have questions, they're going to be able to answer questions about specific steels. And they're a little more knife oriented maybe than, say, Admiral Steel. You might be able to get a little better customer service out of them. Not knocking Admiral, but that's their bread and butter. Finally, there are some specialty steel places. New Jersey Steel Baron, he sells just to knife makers. Also Niagara Steel and SB Specialty Metals. There's some others that kind of do some specialty high-end, mostly stainless and tool type steels that are used by knife makers. Bottom line, there are a lot of places to buy online. I've bought from probably most of the common places, and most of them will do a good job. So don't fret too much about where to buy your steel. There are a lot of good vendors out there. Do I need to heat treat my steel? The answer is yes, absolutely. All knife makers heat treat steel. Now, there may be weird cases of scrap steel that's already been heat treated that you might not need to heat treat, that you'd have to grind very carefully and so on. But in the main, you have to heat treat steel because if you don't heat treat it, it won't harden. If it doesn't harden, it won't hold an edge, and you'll end up with something that looks like a knife but isn't. Can I use XYZ steel to make a knife? So the important thing to understand about steel is that there are a really wide range of steels, and only a very, very small range of all the available steels out there are actually, useful for making knives. So if you're just getting steel from down at Home Depot, or some buddy of yours gave you a piece of steel, odds are pretty good that it's actually not suitable for making a knife. Common steels that people run into every day: 316, 303 stainless. There's some other stainless grades that are great for making pipes and sinks and things like that, but not cutting tools. Same thing goes with carbon steels. There are a wide variety of structural steels: A36, what's generally called mild steel, rebar, all kinds of scrap steels, car bumpers, all kinds of stuff like that that are not suitable for knife making. So the real question you have to ask with any given steel is it kind of on that short list of steels that are appropriate for making knives? So how do I heat treat XYZ steel? So as I was just saying, there's a really wide range of steels out there, and they have to be treated in different ways. So the most important thing that you can do as a knife maker is learn to heat treat steel. It's not a last second afterthought kind of thing. It's actually sort of mission critical to what you're doing. So if you feel like, hey, I don't know too much about heat treating steel, that's okay. When you get started, you know, that's a big important subject that you need to really delve into. And the single best starting place, it's not the answer to all questions, but the best starting place, every single steel that's manufactured has what's called a technical data sheet. And you can look up that technical data sheet online. All the manufacturers, you know, have standard technical data sheets that they produce for the steels that they manufacture. And those technical data sheets will talk about the constituents of the steel, what kind of elements are in it, and they'll talk about how you heat treat it, how to anneal it, how to normalize it, how to temper it, how to harden it, how to quench it. You know, they won't tell you the whole recipe, but they'll give you the basics that you need once you learn a little bit to heat treat steel. How do you make your hamons? So unfortunately, this is one of those questions. It's sort of like, you know, how do you prosecute a death penalty case, or how do you make a car? You know, it's not one of those things that you can answer in 10 minutes. And it's certainly not something that you can answer in the comment section underneath a video. That doesn't mean it's a dumb question. It's just a question that has a very complicated answer. So the super short answer is, I put clay on the spine of the blade, quench it in water, and that causes a difference between the hardened portion, which is going to be on your edge, and the spine, which is going to remain soft. But beyond that, I have a whole video that you can get on my website right here, and you know, that'll answer a whole lot more questions than I could answer here. So do I need an XYZ machine to make knives? So the basic thrust of this question, and it divides up into a lot of different things, is do I need a professional belt grinder? Do I need a power hammer? Do I need a forge press? Do I need you know, an anvil, a forge? You know, there are all these different and fairly expensive pieces of equipment that people want to know if they need in order to just get started in knife making. And the short answer is no, you don't need any of these to get started. You can use a hacksaw, you know, a file, some sandpaper, just a few very simple tools that most people have to get started with knife making. As you get more skill, as you get more interested in it, you know, as you get more committed to it, you might buy these more expensive tools, but don't let yourself feel like, oh God, I can't do this thing because of the tools. So I've got a whole video that I did, you know, that I sell on my website that kind of summarizes all of this about tools. But I've also got a bunch of videos on my channel that address very specific tools. So I get a lot of questions about very specific tools. You know, what kind of belt grinder is probably the most common? What kind of forge press is probably the second most common? So I'll just answer those right now. Where can I get a cheap forge press? Where can I get a cheap belt grinder? Where can I get a cheap anvil? You know, the reality is that you get what you pay for. And what you're paying for when you get high quality belt grinders, for instance, is you get more mass, less chatter, more stability, more control. You know, basically, the more you pay, within a certain range anyway, the more that you're going to get. Does that mean that you have to get the same thing that professional knife makers are using? No, you can start out with, you know, a $130 tool from Harbor Freight. Just recognize that it's an inferior tool to the things that, you know, professionals use. And recognize that you're not going to have the same level of control, that you're going to have to change belts more often, that a whole lot of, you know, aspects of it are kind of inferior. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it at all. As a starting point, sometimes these cheap tools are really, you know, quite handy. Now, when it comes to presses, there's just a limit to how cheap you can go. When I was originally about to buy my press, you know, I went out and I looked at the prices of all the components because I was thinking about making it myself. And I realized I can't even buy all the components for the price that Riverside Machine charges for this, you know, 24-ton press. So I just said, hey, look, I'll let somebody else build it, and you know, bank the time, do something else with it. So just a general wrap up here, you know, one of the things that I think is common to most of the questions, that maybe sort of underlies most of the questions that people have about knife making is, you know, there's a lot to learn out there, and they sort of feel like, gosh, I need to know everything. But you don't. You can just jump in there and start with something small, get started with a little knife or something simple. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be beautiful. And, you know, you learn from each project that you do. Move up, move up, move up, improve your game, step up your game as you go. Don't be frightened of it. Don't be nervous about it. You know, just jump out there, do something, have fun with it, and the more you do it, the better you'll get. So one last little point that I want to make is I hope that, you know, this video doesn't discourage anybody from asking me particular questions. I can't answer all questions. I get a ton of questions. And, you know, I do my best to get to them, but I can't get to them all. There are no stupid questions, so keep firing those questions at me, keep sending me comments, and I hope you guys keep enjoying these videos.